we have found that when we take a really hard look and go to source material and source witnesses, we find that 90+% of all the experiences and information that have been put out there is some type of psychological warfare propaganda to support this false flag operation. And what you find that's very interesting is that what we've had happen with CSETI is that we go out. Now, for 18 years, we've been going out all over the world and training people to make contact with the actual extraterrestrials. And we've had all these beautiful experiences. Nothing has been scary. No one has been harmed. They have just been so unbelievably cosmic consciousness beautiful. And it's so different from what you hear and see if you go to a UFO conference or look at a cable TV show about aliens and UFOs. It's like 180 degrees opposite. And so it's this total disconnect. And I think it's time for us to speak very clearly of what's going on here. And I know that the truth is much stranger than the fiction, and people have their belief systems built up around this because whether you're new age, old age, what have you, it's really easy to buy into the good alien, bad alien thing because we are wired that way from our collective experience as humans. But you know what? That's the big challenge of the moment, is for us to transcend, as it were, the monkey mind and transcend these fears and go into a higher state of consciousness where we can discern not only the deception, this cosmic deception that is being washed like a tidal wave all over the world, but also look and find within ourselves this state of one consciousness, the unbounded universal mind within us that is shining within all of these civilizations, and discern the truth for ourselves. And when we do, what we're going to find is that any civilization capable of interstellar travel, there's nothing on Earth they need. They don't need to be here to get our sperm and eggs. They don't need to be here to get gold mined, like Zecharia Sitchin suggested in the book, his book, I forget the name of it.
There's been so many.
Help me here, Linda. Anyway.
I don't know. There's been too many of his books.
So, you know, there are all these mythologies that are very xenophobic and buy into a certain mindset that are things that we have to learn to transcend and discern the truth, and then with courage learn how to make contact ourselves. Because, you know, here's the basic, you know, you can sit around and sort of, excuse me for saying this, mentally masturbate all day about this stuff, reading other people's accounts. What I tell people, set all that aside. You can learn how to make contact with these visitors yourself. And when you do, if you have this discernment where you can discern the difference between an ARV and a PLF and a real ET craft and an ET being, and you're in this state of consciousness, it'll be so clear what the difference is. There's like night and day. There's no comparison. You're going to be able to see that these visitors who have been coming here for thousands of years, by the way, they have no malice towards Earth and her people. However, they're very concerned about the hostility humans have, and that as Neil Armstrong, who landed on the moon, you know, my uncle designed the lunar module that took Neil Armstrong to the moon, and my uncle was the senior project engineer for that at Grumman. It was now Northrop Grumman, but that built the lunar module. And when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon the first time, and the first man on the moon, the crater around where we landed was crowded with these extraterrestrial vehicles. I have multiple witnesses to this. And Neil Armstrong told a member of our team that, yes, but we were warned off the moon. Why? Because we were going there as part of the arms race with the Soviet Union. We didn't go to the moon. The Apollo program was a highly militarized, competitive program where we weren't going out to the moon, or our plans to go to Mars were not as sort of a unified, peaceful world civilization. It was part of the military-industrial complex competition and a proxy for the Cold War. And that is the truth about the Apollo program. Everyone knows it. So I think that the ETs have made it very clear, the real ETs, that the entry ticket to being interplanetary ourselves is to begin to be civilized, to live together peacefully, to renounce weapons of mass destruction, to go out into space free of weapon systems and with this consciousness of universal peace. And then the universe is going to open its arms wide open. Until then, they're watching what's going on here very, very carefully. Why? Because within our classified programs, as Ben Rich, who was the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, told us before he passed away, and this is the guy, Kelly Johnson started the Skunk Works for Lockheed. And then, the Skunk Works are what built the U-2 and all these high-tech, but they have all these programs dealing with this super high-tech stuff like the alien reproduction vehicles and anti-gravity craft. And he said to us, well, we already have the means to travel among the stars faster than the speed of light. And I knew that already. But that basically those are locked away in a black box, and it would take an act of God to benefit humanity. To which I said, well, it's time for us to be that act of God, because the human race needs this knowledge, but they need the truth that is the real truth and not this spun, fearsome nonsense. The other issue, of course, is that we're not going to be allowed to travel amongst the stars until we become a peaceful and evolved civilization, because I have been told that there are entire worlds out there that are at our level of technological development that they don't even have a word for war. They don't even have a concept of the kind of war and conflict we've had on this planet. And we would be a threat to them. So I turn this around. When I'm meeting with these military folks in Washington and at the Pentagon, I say, look, I know you guys are trained to view anything as a potential threat, but let's turn this around a little bit. Here we are, a civilization. Now, my grandmother had horse and buggies in the late 1800s, and her son, my uncle, puts the first man on the moon. So in 100 years, we go from, because you live to be almost 100, we go from horse and buggies and, rifles and whatnot to thermonuclear weapons and space travel. This would have to be a big red flag coming up over this planet, because our technological development had surpassed our social and spiritual development as a people. I mean, there are individual exceptions, but as a civilization on Earth. And that is the big challenge of now. The big challenge of now is to socially and spiritually develop an understanding of these things and to vow to live together in peace and to go into space in peace. And then the whole cosmos will open for us. But until then, there's a quarantine around this planet, and it's appropriate, because there are planets out there that have to be protected from us. So I tell people, ironically, while everyone's worrying about, running around like Chicken Little with their heads cut off about, the alien threat, I'm going, they're not the threat. We're the threat. Humans are the threat. We're the ones. You can speculate all you want about what the alien agenda, quote unquote, might be, but let's just review the last 100 years of human behavior up until the present moment in Darfur. Genocide, massive warfare, tens of millions of people killed in World War I and II, and never mind the other wars, thousands of hydrogen bombs and thermonuclear weapons that go through space, ICBMs, and then could land all over the world, turning the world into an uninhabitable cinder. And the beginnings of space travel, but in a way that has not been cooperative, and has been a proxy for the military. Now, this is something which, unless you were brain dead and you were, as an extraterrestrial people, you would be rather cautious, and rightly so. So I think we need to, as the old saying goes, take a hard look in the mirror before we start worrying about these other civilizations. I don't think there's a scintilla of evidence that they're hostile. And one thing I want to mention is that if you have the technological ability to travel through interstellar space, do you really think that there's anything on Earth that they would need to acquire? No. Because if you have that ability, you can materialize and dematerialize in various points in space and time. You can, from the elemental level of existence, the zero-point energy field, manifest any material or any substance. you could take one cell of a biological organism and develop it and clone it into a full organism. Even our classified programs already have that ability in genetics and neuroscience. So there's nothing here that they need. This idea that somehow they have to come here to Earth to get this is another mythology. It just doesn't pass the sniff test if you have any scientific understanding of what kinds of sciences would accompany the ability to go faster than the speed of light and travel amongst the stars. So then the question becomes, what is the phenomenon? It's a real phenomenon that people are describing when they describe these weird creatures and these abductions and mutilations and all this stuff. Well, it's not at all what people think. And I think people have to be extremely careful about this and educate themselves on what the covert human capabilities are that extend even into, we're going to get a little stranger here, into the electromagnetic frequencies that are interdimensional that tap into, shall I say, lower astral entities. Now, these are not extraterrestrial, but some would call them demonic, or some would call them astral, what have yous. But at Montauk and other places, experimentation has happened. And this is another whole area of confusion where people confuse these interdimensional weirdnesses with an extraterrestrial, interstellar people. And so what happens is that people throw all this junk together, all these different phenomena, plural, and call it the same thing. And the result is a lot of confusion. But that obfuscation and confusion and chaos in the paradigm has been injected deliberately by people who benefit from chaos and fear. And I think this is why people have to free themselves from that, take a step back, look at the materials we have put out there. You know, I've spent 18 years assembling the most astonishing government documents, insider witness testimony, all the experiences that we have had, and we put it out there at disclosureproject.org. And people need to become educated on that so they don't get fooled again, like the old song, we won't be fooled again. You know, we keep getting fooled. I mean, we were tricked into the weapons of mass destruction thing in Iraq. My concern is that people are so gullible and can so easily be frightened that we'll be tricked again into this interplanetary alien threat scenario, which is a complete hoax, an utter and complete hoax. And who benefits from that? The people who want to consolidate their own central power around a military global junta, or sort of ruling militaristic financial class that has everyone running around scared like we were after 9/11, and who can amass more and more centralized power. So I think people need to wake up to this, and it's time for childhood's end, and it's time for us to realize what the truth is.
Well, I can sure say that having spent approximately 45 weeks in the field with you at CSETI trainings alone, not counting other things that we've done, I've never seen anything that wasn't just amazing and absolutely delightful and spiritual. And you know, we've been talking about the evil ET or alien paradigm here, but what we've seen in the field are just the elevated levels of good ET behavior. I mean, up to the extent of God consciousness beings that we've had a lot of contact with lately. It's just amazing. And the interview that we did that's archived on December 26th about the Orion transmissions really goes into that a lot if people haven't heard that.
Exactly, and I think that's why people have to understand is that the actual interstellar civilizations that are here go from advanced and unified and peaceful all the way up to the level of supernal God consciousness civilizations that are they're material and they're from physical worlds and they have spacecraft, but their technologies and their consciousness are operating from that finest celestial level of evolution that's astonishing. And that's the level that we are often interfacing with, and a support role around us will be with other ET civilizations that are on the evolutionary path to there. And by the way, there is a centralized global universal order to this. It isn't as if these civilizations are allowed to run around the cosmos like the Wild West. I mean, even humans have the United Nations, never mind it's very dysfunctional. So I think in conclusion, regarding what we want to share today is that people have an opportunity to choose how we respond to the cosmos and how we are in the cosmos. These visitors are here to help us and to understand us, and they're waiting. They're waiting for the human race to mature to a level of the first entry of what is considered mature world civilization, where we're living peacefully together. And we're there. We're getting very close. It doesn't seem that way sometimes, but I'm optimistic that that is exactly where we will end up. And these civilizations, which are highly organized and very conscious and rather enlightened, are standing ready to assist us as we make that transformation from the current period of division and confusion to a period of world peace and universal peace.